Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to Timeout with Bostonian Rap, and I am your host, Riselman. Now, in addition to my regularly scheduled show, which you can catch on Mondays from 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m., I occasionally do additional shows during the course of the week, and this is one of those shows. I am today delighted to have Andrew Castanuela on my show. He is a candidate for U.S. Senate in Texas for the 2012 elections. Now, before I actually bring Andrew on, I would like to start my show as I normally do, and that's with a couple of quotes. Now, the first one is actually from Ronald Reagan. I know it's hard when you're up to your armpits in alligators, but remember you came here to drain the swamp. And he actually said that back in 1982, February 10th. The second quote I have is from Plato. Let parents bequeath to their children not riches, but the spirit of reverence. Now I'd like to bring Andrew on. Andrew, how are you today?
All right, Rachel, how about yourself?
I'm doing great. So this is very exciting. I try to follow as many elections as I can. It's impossible to follow every single one, but, again, I try to follow as many as I can. Obviously here in my home state of Massachusetts, but there are, of course, exciting things going on all over the country now, including your race. So, once again, you're running for the U.S. Senate in Texas, and this is for the 2012 elections.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have to ask you, and a lot of people say, well, wait a minute. 2012, this is 2010. Why is he starting so early? What would you, if someone were to ask you that, what would you say?
Well, actually, we started the election last year. At that time, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchin, who was also running for governor here in the state of Texas, had a primary in March of this year, and she had made some suggestions that she was going to go ahead and resign her seat, win or lose the election. And at the point, there was just myself along with many other candidates, both Republican and others, who went ahead and put their name on the process of getting a special election. Unfortunately, she went ahead and chose to go ahead and stay in the Senate. So those of us who were pretty much on the ballot, or I shouldn't say on the ballot yet, but in the process of getting on the ballot, we're going to have to decide whether we just continue to run or do we go ahead and drop out. Myself, among some others, decided, hey, we're going to go ahead and put this through and follow through. If you make a decision, you're going to do something. You got to kind of go ahead and honor your decision. Now, for me, more of a grassroots, in the trench kind of guy, it's difficult for me to kind of get out there and get my name out, especially since I just retired from the service, so a lot of people are not aware of who I am and what I represent. So the earlier I get started, the easier it is for me to get some name recognition, as well as to build those campaign war chest funds that they have a lot of access to. It's as a grassroots candidate, you really kind of get started early. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to try to compete against the heavyweight, so to speak, as the primaries get closer.
Right, kind of jump in at the last minute.
Yes.
Close to impossible.
Mm-hmm. It can be done, but unless you're rich or you have a lot of people backing you financially, people aren't going to know who you are.
Well, that's it. And even if you do have a lot of money and you're well connected, again, it's just still very, very difficult. So I think you're doing a very smart thing. And I'm glad you touched upon the two things that I think a lot of people don't necessarily think of. And to be honest, I had never thought of it myself. But the more involved I became with politics, which eventually included working on campaigns,
mm-hmm.
You come to realize that people need to know who you are. Obviously they need to know that an election is taking place, but they need to know who you are. And that's a really, really big thing, name recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that a lot of people don't necessarily readily know or readily think of, I should say, is like you said, you mentioned a war chest, and you know, a lot of these incumbents, particularly if they've been in office for a while, if they're firmly entrenched, they have a lot of money at their disposal. Mm-hmm. So you really just kind of have to get out early, make some noise. I mean, obviously the right kind of noise,
exactly.
And just, you know, just say, look, I'm putting myself out there, and can you help me? Can you help spread the word? Can you spare $5? Can you spare $20? I mean, believe me, I know how it works, and it's not easy.
No, it's not easy, especially like you said, they got that big war chest, and it'd be nice if they used it on a positive sense of campaigning, but not only, well, they're going to try to bring you down, your credibility and everything else. You know, they're going to really throw some mud out there against you, and if they've never heard of you and they don't know, like you said, who you are as a person, then they're going to probably believe what they see in front of the TV or hear on the radio. You know, so that's on the downside of campaigning, I should say. That's the bad part. I think I was talking to an individual in Farmers Branch the other day. He goes, "Oh, so you run against so-and-so?" He goes, "Well, you know, so-and-so already has a lot of money." I said, "Yeah." I said, "It's sad that it's become about politics and not about the people, you know, because that's all about raising money, and the more money you raise, the better candidate you are, the more you have to sling around."
Well, yeah, and it's really, I've seen that here, you know, big bucks being poured into campaign ads that say how terrible one political hopeful is, and you kind of sit back and you think, okay, well, I actually know this political hopeful, I know what he or she is like, but what about the people who don't? So like you said, it's no longer about actually, you know, running and stepping up and getting your message out, but it's about also being able to combat whatever mud's thrown at you, because that's part of it, isn't it? Like you said, the downside. People like to throw mud, and then they kind of step back and say, okay, let's see what's stuck. So,
well, that's a good way to win an election. If you can destroy another person's credibility, then you pretty much won half the battle. And it's sad because a lot of the credibility is, you know, falsified. And then, you know, it kind of reminds me of there's an ancient tribe in Mexico called the Toltec Indians, and they live their life under 4 principles. And one of the first principles is you're a person of your word. What you say matters most important than anything else. And when you're mudslinging, then you're not being very honest about the situation. You're not being having the integrity. And that's the way I think our American society, our American political system has kind of looked at saying, you know, we're tired of the mudslinging. You know, we want honest candidates with integrity representing us at this point in our juncture.
Yeah, and it really, integrity is a very big word, and you know, I wish I have no problem with you using it because you know I've been doing research and I've interacted with you, and I'm convinced that you know the magnitude of that word. But, you know, other people just kind of, you know, bandy it out, and I kind of just, you know, kind of hold my head and say, please stop. Now, you are not just kind of stepping up because you yourself are fed up and you're worried about the direction of this country. I mean, you are, but you also have a beautiful family. You have a lovely wife, and you have 6 children. 6 children ranging in the age from kindergarten to young adult. So having a family, having children, has that influenced your decision to run?
Well, actually, it had a very significant influence. I mean, you know, I'm middle-aged, I'll say that. And
don't be shy.
I won't say my age. But no, to be honest with you, I've lived my life. You know, I've done what I've needed to do thus far. But then I started looking back. You know, like I said, you'll find out maybe as we talk more. You know, when I retired from the service, I said, oh, you know, I'm ready to sit back and just enjoy the good life. And as I was doing that, I just started seeing things were going haywire. And I said, you know what? If I want my kids to really kind of have any kind of future, or even to have the possibilities that I had, and whatever and whatever facet that they want to go into, they're not going to have it if I don't step up. And I think that's where, you kind of look at your kids, and my 23-year-old daughter just gave me my first grandson in October last year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so God, I mean, and then him, and unfortunately, he looks just like his grandpa, by the way. But, but he's, and it just kind of reminds me, this is what it's about. I mean, they are the future. They
really are.
They're the blood. They're everything that I want them to represent. And if I don't do it, who's going to do it for them?
Well, right, and it's about just this real concern.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very grateful for having grown up here in America. I was born in this country, and I think that whether you're born in this country or you're naturalized, I think that most people, I'm lucky to be an American because it's a great country.
Mm-hmm.
And the things about it that you appreciate that make you say something like, I'm lucky to be an American,
mm-hmm.
you want those things to be maintained.
Exactly.
You want future generations to be able to have those same feelings,
mm-hmm.
and to have that same kind of experience and kind of regard for the country. And so I think what you're doing, stepping up is great. Now let me ask you this. So you are obviously clearly stepping up. You're running for U.S. Senate. But now, how about this? If you didn't get involved, if you were just kind of to hang back, what would you have seen happening?
I think what we're seeing happening now, to be honest with you, I'm glad to see people kind of step forward. But as you see, and the one thing is, I spent 20 years serving in the service, and every 4 years I end up raising my hand and said I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, I am a very, very, very strong believer in the United States Constitution because it is kind of like it is the backbone of it that gives us all the opportunities, and it defines exactly who can do what and what it cannot do, and what people cannot do. And if we kind of focus on that concept, we will get back to where we need to be. So with that said, the Constitution is very important to me. If we do not step up now, and I mean all of us, not just me, I'm talking every American,
right.
does not step up and defend the Constitution, because it's our. I kind of look at it this way. There's men and women right now, American men and women, servicemen and women, who are dying for us to run the country back home. And if we're not doing that as American citizens, we're kind of almost looking at their lives as meaningless. The people are sacrificing their lives so that we can have the opportunity to run the country back home. Because when they retire, when they come home for leave, or whatever it may be, they want to be able to have the same country they fought for to be the same country they're going to live in when they retire. And if we don't step up now, that's what would have happened. And that's why I just kind of got involved and just said, I can't let it step back. I guess there's some things you learn in leadership. You have one or two. Well, I'm not going to say you can crap or get off the pot. Okay, that old thing.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm cleaning it up, by the way.
Yeah, right. I like that expression because I'm very friendly with a candidate out here in Massachusetts, around this neck of the woods, and she's a great candidate, and I wish her all the luck in the primary. She really is a fabulous candidate, and that's something that she likes to say as well. Other ways to say it, step up, step off, but how you put it, how she puts it, that suits me just fine as well. And I'm really, Andrew, I'm really glad that I'm just kind of sitting there taking this all in, listening to you, and just really the idea that it's not because we are not in uniform, it's not because, it's not like, okay, well, these people answered the call to duty, they put on a uniform, they're putting their lives on the line, so we don't have to do anything. And that's false.
Oh, yeah.
That is so false. false. I mean, we have our part to do here as well. I mean, okay, we don't have a uniform to put on, but my goodness gracious, those of us clearly, who are not in the military, but, we still are expected to kind of stand up for what this country is about. And like you said, do what we can. If we see that the government is trampling on the Constitution, if we see that people are kind of people who should be helping to respect and uphold the Constitution, if we see these people thumbing their nose at it, then the people need to step up. They need to rise up. And I'm not talking about being violent, and I'm not talking about being crazy.
No.
And I have to say that because, you do have, unfortunately, members of the press who they themselves have a great responsibility, and they have been horribly negligent for quite some time. And these particular members of the press would have you believe that if you stand up and want to fight to preserve the Constitution, if the Constitution means something to you, there's something wrong with you, that you're some kind of fanatic, that, you're going to take some people hostage, and you know what I mean? It's really that sad. And I want to talk a little bit later during the interview about being pro-American. But before I do that, I want to talk about Ronald Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
So I started out the show with the Ronald Reagan quote, and he was really something, and I'm just so grateful to have grown up, because I came of age when he was in office, and I'm just so grateful to have grown up during that period. I mean, great man, a great man. And, it's so funny because I actually come from a family that's Democrat. But as conservative as my family is, my father, I can tell you that he was more conservative than so many Republicans that you see out there today, whether they be in the Bay State, here in Massachusetts, or anywhere else. And so there was always this great reverence for Ronald Reagan. And so, again, the quote, I know it's hard when you're up to your armpits in alligators to remember you came here to drain the swamp. And so people like you who are really, really trying to do your part, I see you, that's what you're doing. You're trying to drain the swamp. Now, tell me about your reverence, because it is, I think, a reverence for Ronald Reagan. If I go to your site, if I go there right now, you have this, flag, this, beautiful flag, the Texas flag, and then you say, if we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under, Ronald Reagan. Talk to me about your influence that this man has had on you.
Well, it was right about in the 80s, because that's when I was right in high school. I graduated in 84, but it was right in the 80s when we first got elected, and I was about a freshman in high school. And, at that age, a lot doesn't get involved in politics especially during that time period with the teenagers and stuff like that. Especially being in Texas, we're talking about football and everything else.
Sure.
But you know what? But that was the one thing that was kind of united our country, and that was, they call him the great communicator as well. But what I liked about most, and this is even I can recall it today, and it just kind of, to some degree, gives me, the goosebumps when I think about it. And that's saying, when he puts his foot down and he says, I ain't gonna take no BS from nobody. We're gonna start taking care of our country first. And then he builds up our defense, and he starts giving the Russians, a hard time about, how things are going to happen. But he was smart about it, the tactics he used were very articulate. And the way he communicated was so simple, but yet at the same time, the words that he used were so profound. There was I was reading in one of my classes a while back on Martin Luther King and letters from Birmingham jail, and I hadn't read a lot about MLK, but when I started reading these letters that he was writing, I said, this gentleman is so articulate about writing and expressing what he's writing, and to a point that I said, wow, this guy is really good. And I was just kind of thinking of, Ronnie in the same way. I said, the way he just communicated was really awesome, which a lot of people, by the way, don't know. King was a Republican. But
yeah, right. Yeah, well, I say that so often, and people just kind of they look at me like I have 5 heads. And I actually had this one guy, and it's so funny because sometimes I find that I do get out more with other people on the right than I do with people on the left. How sad is that? I mean, we're basically in a great big old mess, and here I am duking it out with fellow so-called conservatives. And so I had this, I put a post about Martin Luther King Jr. being a Republican, and this is on Facebook. And so I had this gentleman come on my page and basically say, well, he really wasn't actually, and, he actually had some Marxist ideas and blah, 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 blah. And, I was just like, you know what? The man was a Republican. He was a Republican. I mean, we're not going to get into, he was, I mean, I was going to indulge him, like for a split second I considered indulging him. Kind of like, just kind of saying to him, well, what part of what he is saying, what part of this does it sound Marxist to you? What part of it, and then I said, you know what, I fulfilled my idiot quota for the day. I'm not going to indulge him. And, fine.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. So I kind of look at Ronald Reagan, and he was the one president that I looked at initially, because he was my induction into politics, or the political scene, I should say. I shouldn't say politics, but how my mentorship of a president. And I'm sure other generations had different mentors of what they view the president to be, but that was mine. And since then, of course, I've seen many presidents and have different commanders in chief since then. But he's the one that I just stuck right in there within my heart and said, look, if we're gonna do this, if we're gonna take care of America, this is the way we got to do it. And some of his ideas were kind of what some would call progressive, but you know what? It's not progressive in that sense. It's just he was bringing new ideas to how to resolve for some of the government issues.
Well, and the thing is it's funny, this whole idea about progressives. I actually, for me now at this point in time, it's interchangeable, sadly, with socialism, because that's what it's become. I mean, it kind of started off as kind of like, you have a friend who means well, but they kind of go a little bit too far. They give a little too much, and it's, instead of accomplishing good, harm, it's more harm is accomplished than good. Well, I think that's what happened with progressivism. And I think that, again, it started off as focusing on those who do not have and trying to help them and trying to basically, make sure that people have dignity in their lives. And what it ended up being is taking away people's ability to do for themselves, or taking away people's desire to want to do for themselves. It became a concerted effort on the part of the government.
Now that's Marxist, by the way.
Yeah, very Marxist, to control and to shape the lives of people. And so I think Ronald Reagan, it was about just showing concern for people. And it's not because you're conservative that you can't show concern for people.
Exactly.
I think that there's this idea that you are very tight and you wear a tie that's knotted up to your neck, and you have to be white, Anglo-Saxon Protestant, preferably a male, and these are all stereotypes. These are all ideas that it's sad, but we still have to expend so much time and energy trying to debunk them. I have a question for you, and I think, I consider this. I'm thinking about your influence, the influence that Ronald Reagan has had on you, rather, the fact that you consider yourself an outsider. You were very proud to say, look, I'm not one of the typical fat cats. I don't hold this degree or that degree. What you see, Andrew Castanuela, I'm a family man. I'm a proud retired member of the United States Air Force, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few. You're an everyman. This is who I am. You're an outsider. Do you think, in light of the people who are currently holding office, do you think that Reagan would be considered an outsider today?
Oh, he would be, in my opinion, he'd be considered an outsider because he would be the one that's kind of focusing on the issues, not part of the, speaking in your state, the Scott Brown, the political machine, if I use that terminology. Because he would be focused on the conservative ideas of what we need to do to get our country back. And you think about it, he was an outsider when he ran. You were having about Jimmy Carter was just finishing up, was running up against him. Everything was going on, from the foreign policies to, the economic crisis was going on, and he just kind of stepped in and he says, this is my idea. At that time, that's the leadership that we needed. And now, I think our current political structure in our American society system is kind of been, I don't want to say brainwashed, but conditioned, so to speak, that either you vote for the lesser two evils or this or that, and he would be one that says, what? No, I'm on principle, I'm on values, I'm on the things that matter to my American love for this country, and that would be an outsider to some degree. That's where you get a lot from myself as well as some other people like within the Tea Party system. That's what their love is. You see conservatives, what their love is. You even see some Democrats because they're tired of how their party has even gone in a direction, and they want something different. They want some stability back in their life instead of this chaos that we have right now.
It's interesting how I actually agree with you that Ronald Reagan would be considered an outsider to whatever extent today. And this is someone who did so much for so many people.
Mm-hmm.
Take the R and the D away from people's name. Forget about political affiliation.
Mm-hmm.
And just, again, the incredible irony is that he would be considered, when you compare him to a Nancy Pelosi and a Harry Reid and Steny Hoyer, Barbara Boxer, Waxman, all these different, Ed Markey. They're all he would be considered someone who is not a part of the club.
Exactly. And then that's a good way to put the club. Some people use the old guard. He was he would be outside, fighting for unification. That was his thing. It was trying to unify the country, and he did that. And I think that's why both Democrats and Republicans, conservatives and whatever it may be, he unified them all under one important attribute that we have as Americans, and that's nationalism. He united us as a nation. Well, we need to be united. And that's where we're at right now. As a nation, we need to be reunited under our nationalistic moral values. And I think we've lost some of that, and wanting people to kind of, or I don't even call politicians, I prefer to say statesmen, to step up and start, re-interjecting that process of nationalism.
Well, I think so. And it's so funny that you say that because, here in the Bay State, again, I know some people who are running, and they have a belief in God. And there's this concerted effort, not only by some members of the media, but also some members of the Republican Party to make these candidates who have faith, to try to kind of paint them as people who, kind of like a Bible thumper. And it says, hold up, wait a minute, I'm actually a religious person. I am a spiritual person. Mm-hmm. And that actually ensures, it enables me to be tolerant. It enables me to look at someone else, and whereas I might see that person as something completely different from me, because of my faith, I look at that person and see a fellow human being.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you're right. I think we need to inject morals back into the game, and I think that religion, spirituality does play a role.
Well, it defines us who we really are as an individuals. If I go on a tangent here as well, as an addictions and drug and alcohol counselor, my goal is to try to get them to recover, not so much recovering from not using, but recovering their soul back, recovering their life, their meaning. And that's kind of like we're looking at our country. We're trying to recover our soul back, our meaning as Americans, not how much we've been portrayed by other people, between people in the media or even between other countries. We know who we are as Americans. We have very strong moral character of what defines us. We just need to go back in recovery and recover that.
I agree. I think that you hit it spot on, and it is interesting that you talk about what you do for a living, and you work with people who are drug addicted or alcohol addicted. If you want to get into this, because it's about helping people. That seems to be another one of the recurring themes in what you say and your message that you're trying to get out there. And it would seem that this desire to help people is motored by, again, your faith.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that that's accurate?
I would say that that's pretty accurate. My faith is in the sense of self as far as what I believe in, what drives me, how I define myself. My clients, I tell them, I said, I've been in the business, 22 years. And then I tell them, I said, but in 22 years I haven't cured one soul. And they kind of look at me like, what's wrong with you? You ain't worth anything. And I laugh at them. I said, because you have to understand something. One, it's your choice. After you walk out of my office, it's going to be your choice what you choose to do or not to do. I'm going to try to help you on the process. I said, but more importantly, when you start making these choices, you end up finding yourself. And when you find yourself, then you're not going to need some pleasure-seeking chemical or addiction or behavior to kind of suffice for your pleasure. And I said, and actually, when you do better, and then I work a lot with kids as well, I said, it makes me feel good knowing that you've gotten your stuff together. That is in some ways my payment. All I really need is enough to pay my bills, and I'm content. But helping others is it's the American way. It's the conservative way. It's what we do.
Well, that's it. You know what I mean? But I think that's important. The work that you're doing, because it's about having a history of trying to help people. Mm-hmm. And I've talked to other candidates who like you just really want to do the right thing and want to step up and take a leading role, if you will, in trying to get this country back on track. And this kind of differentiates you. Actually, not kind of, it does, and in a really big way at that. You from candidates who are really quite in it just to win it. Just people who are looking to see their name in lights, because there really is a difference. Politics can be it can be lots of fun.
I wouldn't say that.
It comes firmly in cheek. And so you have people who get involved to get in the game, and, they're inserting themselves into, they become members of this community organization and that community mm-hmm. organization. And it's so funny because they've never really had any kind of connection to others. They've never had really kind of a role that saw them helping other people. And then all of a sudden they run for office, and you're kind of like, okay, well, where does this concern come from? So, I think I am, to be honest, more comforted when I see people who do have a bit of a history, who have an extensive history, such as yourself. It's kind of reaching out to other people and wanting people to do better and be better.
Well, and it's funny you say that, because that's the way I kind of look at, to some degree, government. If you want to run in a government capacity, and government is about governing people, well, the last part of that is people. How do you govern people if you don't know people? You got to know people in order to govern people. Otherwise, you're just going to govern for the sake of government, and who knows what's going to come out of it. And I think actually we know what it is, because that's what we have now. You really got to know people in order to help people, in my opinion.
I completely agree. Now, what I find fascinating, I want to kind of move from this to your role in the Tea Party, because you have quite a role on the Tea Party. How about this? You have taken a leading role in speaking out in favor of the Tea Party. And I want you to talk to me about that, what the Tea Party means to you, and then, in your own fashion, talk about that and the fact that you are considered a minority in the eyes of the people.
Well,
many people. I mean,
well, yeah, it's an interesting encounter as I travel the state and encounter with people. But starting off with the Tea Party process, and I kind of think about it, if you look at back in Boston, you had the Boston Tea Party, which basically people who were revolting against, England at that time for some of the situations that were going on. And that kind of theme was kind of what the Tea Party is all about, is they were talking about saying, we're tired of the government, let me phrase that, the federal government at least at this point, and even to some degrees even the state governments. We're tired of the federal government coming and mandating us to try to do this and try to do that. They've lost touch of who we are as the people. And the theme kind of goes with the Tea Party movement. So, I think I wrote an article once about Tea Parties or patriots, and I use the word patriot in the sense of back into the the Revolutionary War. and in reference to, you had normal Americans who were stepping up, the militia, the civil militia, was stepping up and was defending their homes and they were defending their country and their beliefs. And that's basically what the underlying denomination is with the Tea Party movement. You have normal Americans that say, what, we're not part of the political process, and we're not even part of, the government process. We are the process. We believe in our country, we believe in our Constitution, we believe in our family, and we believe in God, and these are the principles that kind of define who we are. Now, of course, like you said earlier, they'll want to paint it one way or another, and that's where the media comes into play and probably throws, like you said earlier, I think the Bible thumpers, they want to paint that as a Tea Party, or they want to paint the Tea Party as being racist. You know what? And it goes back to what I said earlier about the war chest. Whenever you can kill somebody's credibility, organization or individual, then you kind of win the battle. But if they continue to fight back, then you got a fight on your hands. This goes back to psychological warfare that we kind of do even often. Dropping leaflets in Iraq to try to win the people's mind. Spreading information and stuff like that. And that's where I kind of look at the Tea Party movement from that perspective. Is normal Americans who just want to take the country back without any kind of violence whatsoever. They're using the constitutional means to be able to make that happen. That they've been empowered to do. Now, as far as a minority, I guess I look at that and I have a hard time swallowing that because I don't see it as a minority. I don't want to be considered a minority. I am of a different ethnicity, and that's kind of like says okay, but it's irrelevant. If I pull out my passport right now, it doesn't say what ethnicity I am. It doesn't say what race I am. It says I am an American, and it's blue, just like everybody else's that's an American. So when I go to Japan, or if I go to Israel, or if I go to Russia, or if I go to Mexico, wherever it may be that I go, it says I am an American. Okay? So I'm not going to say that, sometimes when I go to meetings, they kind of look at you and they're going to look and say, oh, what? You're running on the Republican? What are you doing running Republican? I just kind of look at them and I say, well, what can I say? I guess to myself, I guess there's some things you're just going to have to learn that Ronald Reagan says, it just doesn't matter. We are about being American.
Well, that's it. And, I can actually, relate. I mean, anyone who knows me personally or anyone who has, even if you don't, if you've seen a picture of me, or even if you just listen to me talk, I'll say that, okay, I'm a person of color. That doesn't, all that means is that I have a certain amount of melanin. It's all pretty nebulous and vague because, like you, at the end of the day, I consider myself an American. And the only thing that matters is, my belief in this country and my desire, to see it thrive and flourish. Because when it does, the citizens do as well. But I had to ask you that because, of course, everything that they say about the Tea Parties and the Tea Partiers, and so then when you have someone like yourself who, it's interesting because look at this dichotomy. Here you are, you're just an American who happens to be of Hispanic heritage. Now, the people who
are of Hispanic heritage.
Right. But
I'm not downplaying it, but it's
But at the end of the day, you're an American. That's like you said. That's what your passport says, and that's it. End of story. And like you said, it's not about being ashamed. You're very proud, but it's it's kind of like I'm here to make sure that this great country I live in, it will continue to be great. And whereas you have people who want to disparage the Tea Party movement, and what they're going to do is focus on the appearance of some people, the ethnicity of some people, or what they think is the ethnicity of some people, and use that and kind of extrapolate and say, okay, well, you see all Tea Partiers look like that, or all Tea Party, and it's kind of like, well, no, like you said, and you've actually, you wrote a very, I thought, something very well written, because you, of course, have a blog, and it basically just stressed that the Tea Party is bringing people together of all backgrounds and all shapes and sizes and walks of life. So that's really what it is. Now, sometimes you encounter the same kind of, or you kind of get that when you say, okay, well, here I am running as a Republican.
Mm-hmm. And I get that second look.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Right.
I get that look like, okay, so what's going on here? And you know what? And that goes. A lot of it goes back to conditioning, so to speak. I'll say, so a lot of ways we've been programmed one way, whether through television or another thing. That we stereotype people, we categorize people, we block people in, whether social class or whether racial class or geographical. You got Boston over there, and you got Texas down here, and all this. It's all about classification. And trust me, I know about classification with the DSM-4. But anyway, but it's. I kind of, when I run into that, I just kind of say, well, this is the part of the educational process that they got to know that who I am and look past that initial color or what's the word I'm looking for, gender, and say, look,
anything that people would use to say, you're different.
Yeah, and to say, no, we're the same. And because when it really comes down to it, we believe in the same things the majority of the times. We just have a different ways of how we think we need to get there.
Well, right, and that's not always connected to appearance. And I shared with you a story, because again I experienced the same thing. People, so you support the Tea Party? How interesting! Oh, you're conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're Republican. Oh, really? That's weird. and I actually, it's so funny because you mentioned Scott Brown a little earlier in this interview, and when I was, back in January when, it was just really coming back down to the last 2-3 weeks, and I was actually out doing stand-ups like so many other people for Scott Brown, and people also making phone calls, just doing all kinds of different things to support him and to, in the hopes of getting him elected. And so here I am doing a stand-up, and, I had a few people and I had a few looks, and I'm fluent in facial expressions. I'm fluent in English, French, and facial expressions. And there was one that, there were a few that said rather, what's wrong with this picture? And it's like, there's nothing wrong with this picture. I'm a young woman who thinks that we can do better than Martha Coakley. We can, in the person of Scott Brown, and does. And it was so funny because I think I told you another story, and this is actually when Martha Coakley called upon Barack Obama to help campaign for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so Barack Obama came to Northeastern University, which is, very close to where I live. And so there were a lot of people in support of Scott Brown, but also people in support of Martha Coakley, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one woman, drive by me in the car and say, "Oh, Scott Brown can't do anything for you." And it's like, but look at the car you're driving. And isn't that the muffler to your car that you lost like 2 miles back? I mean, what exactly are, liberal Democrats doing for you? I mean, never mind what people do. What are they doing for you? That you can lecture me on whom I should support. So yeah, I think that. I think you have a lot of wisdom to impart, because it's really ultimately, it's not about what a person looks like. It's what a person wants to do with his or her life.
Mm-hmm. And that's the key there, is that like I said, we've been conditioned to be divided to a great degree.
Sure.
And it's and the goal is to look past those divisions and understand, to that old cliche, united we stand, divided we fall. Which one do you want to choose?
Right. Now I want to move on and ask you a question about education.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we have another 14 minutes left, but I want to talk to you about education, because you have an AS in social psychology, you also have a BS, and then you also have an AAS from Air University, the United States Air Force. So that's all very, very impressive. So talk to me about what education means to you.
Well, some of it goes, it really kind of starts off with my upbringing, so to speak. My family, well, of course, we're going back to my dad's side of the family, fifth-generation Texans. But we were also, migrant workers, where most of them ended up working in the fields. And even on my mom's side, they would end up working the cottons, or they'd work the potatoes, or they'd, work whatever it was. And sometimes we'd travel around the United States. And that's where we sustained our family income.
Right.
So there wasn't a lot of education. But my grandfather, on my mother's side, where there were 6 kids, he elected one kid to go to school. Okay, and that kid was my mother. So she was the one that got to go to high school and do all the things, and she ended up being a cheerleader and stuff like that. But she ended up dropping out her senior year. Of course, that would make my grandfather very upset. But she ended up going back and finishing her school and got her GED. But my mother strongly suggested education. And of course, we're young pups. We go to school, and when we all graduated high school, Mom was really, really proud. But she also wanted somebody to kind of go to college and move on. Now, when I entered the Air Force, I had a few years of college before I went into the Air Force, and then I got my Associates in Applied Science and Mental Health Services. And then I ended up moving on. I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and get my bachelor's. And through my bachelor's, I ended up getting my Associates in Social Psychology, and then I got my bachelor's in Psychology. And I was telling my dad when I graduated from college, and I said, Mom would be extremely proud right now about me getting the education. And he agreed, because that was one thing Mom constantly preached on, was I want y'all to get an education, because she understood that and in my studies as well, especially from sociology, is in a social class structure, education is the key that's going to move you up the social ladder to a great degree. The more educated you are, the more they're going to pay you because you have a degree. Without a degree, then you're tying your hands. Even if it's a diploma, high school diploma, you're tying your hands on trying to get a good job, and you're really putting the employer in charge of how much they can pay you based upon your education.
So what would you I was going to ask is, what would you like to see, for the educational system in Texas? What would you like to do? Because, again, clearly education is important to you.
Well, there's, from a political perspective, is what I would like to see happen with the education system is, one, be the federal government to butt out of education, quit trying to, tell states what they should or should not do, and then two, let the states or let the teachers teach. Okay. In the state of Texas, we have a tax system that we know most of our teachers. And my wife works for a school district, but we have a tax system that to some degree, the teachers have to kind of prepare the students to pass the tax test in order to show to the state that they made significant progress. Well, are they really teaching them everything they need to succeed in life, from the basics of the 4 R's,
right.
reading, writing, arithmetic, or are they just teaching to the test? So I feel like they kind of tie the teachers' hands flexibility to be creative. When I grew up, I remember my teachers were teaching me that they find a way to get the message across. And that was why teachers were so influential. Why I think they enjoyed teaching. Now it's difficult to get teachers because it's more of a going back to a category-based system. Says you got to do this, 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 and it's taking away their flexibility to make them to be effective. You get the kids involved in the school system, then you're going to get them to graduate. You get them to graduate, you're going to get some to go to college. You get them to go to college, we have a smarter society. You have a smarter society, you're going to be more competitive on the world market. And that's the key. When we do not educate our children and our young children, our young adults to prepare to be not only competitive in our society, but competitive in the world, we are really hurting ourselves from a global perspective.
Oh, no, I completely agree. I think what I like about you is just, there's just, so many different elements, and, it's about wanting to be on top. It's about, recognizing the need to be competitive. It's about recognizing the need to be able to take a leading role, and we have to be educated in order to do that. Now, I also want to move on to another aspect of your professional experience, of your personal experience, talking about what you bring to the table and what would make you a strong candidate is your 20 years in the Air Force. So talk to me about that. Where do you see America's role in this world? How do you see it? What do you think about our military strength? Do you think that at this time we need to be cutting back, or do you think we need to be shoring up our strength? Talk to me about...
No. From a military perspective, I will tell you straight up that we need to beef up our military. We need to beef up our research and development. We need to increase our manpower system. And I say that, probably against a lot of the things, the chief of staff may think differently. But because we're very downsized to the point that our troops are being deployed over and over again, and they're not having that R&R time to relax and wind down. And I can tell you that from a psychological perspective. We need more individuals in the United States military to be able to sustain, and I know we did this back in the times of creating our philosophy of our doctrine was to be able to fight 2 wars at once. Well, it's a different age. I'm not going to disagree with that. It's a different threat. But that doesn't mean the old threats went away either, So we definitely need to beef up our military strength. We need to shore up more loyalty to our allies, That's one of the biggest concerns that I think kind of tick me off. And I usually don't try to let my emotions get the best of me, but whenever we pull the missiles out of, Poland, out of the Eastern Bloc countries against, the fact that Russia didn't want them there. Well, you know what? It's always been a deterrent to keep certain countries and communists in check. You're
right.
not helping the situation here. Or if you're not backing Israel in the situation there, you're cutting off our allies, the people that really rely on us for leadership. And when we're going to need them, where are they going to be? So I have a very significant issue in reference to, what we're doing from a military perspective in reference to that.
Well, I think a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot. I mean, I think there are a number of people out there who think that I don't even want to speculate, but I do think, no, actually, no. I think there's a sizable part of our population, whether it's because they don't believe in war, because they're naive, they want to see America on its knees. But I think that there are people out there who are saying, well, we need to cut back. We need to kind of take a step back. We don't need to have all this military strength. But I agree with you. I think that your 20 years of experience in the military, I think, it's powerful because you actually know the threat of what is out there. No one has to tell you. You don't have to sit down and try to imagine. You know.
Yeah, I mean, when it really comes down to it, and I'm going to expand on my position in reference to veterans, but if you really kind of get down to it, without any kind of military defense, we will have no country, bottom line. It doesn't make a difference if you got a constitution, doesn't make if you got a Department of Education, Department of Energy, doesn't make a difference what departments you have. If you are not able to defend yourself and defend your country, then what are you going to do?
No,
and then it goes back, kind of like to Israel the same way. I mean, Israel is not going to let itself get down. It's going to listen to probably sometimes to what Washington's wanting to do. Not saying that it has to follow them, but it's not going to. It's got to take care of itself.
Absolutely, and I think that there are enough people at the very least who understand that. Gee whiz.
You'd be surprised how they don't. They say, no, we still need to cut back.
Yeah, right. Well, if Israel just, had like a kumbaya fest, I think that a lot of people just think, well, can't we all just get along? Well, okay, we can try. If that doesn't work, we need to have the guns loaded behind us. And it's not about warmongering. It's about just being realistic, and it's about recognizing the world in which we live and the threats that are kind of like hovering around us, hovering over us.
Mm-hmm.
You started to talk about, expanding upon, America's role in the world, what America needs to do militarily, in terms of, what it has and how it should, fortify, its supplies. You touched upon veterans. Now, I know that you have very strong feelings regarding veterans. And let me just say this. We have a couple of minutes left of the live streaming. Okay. And then after that, the show will go into, it'll still be on, but it won't be live streaming. And so I want to invite people to continue to listen to the interview, and they will be able to do so in its entirety to the archives. Those who have listened thus far, I'm sure you're delighted with Andrew Castanuela, as I am. A wonderful, wonderful voice, stepping up, has a beautiful family, answered the call to duty once by being a member of the U.S. Air Force, answering the call to duty once again by running for U.S. Senate in the great state of Texas. So, again, I invite everyone to continue to listen to Andrew's story in the archives. Okay, so please, Andrew, if you could continue and talk about veterans and your feelings about fellow veterans, I should say, and what you would like to see done and what you would like to try to help accomplish.
Well, and that actually goes back to Ronald Reagan, by the way, who started the Department of Veterans Affairs. But, within the veterans, I think people take them for granted because, they say, all right, you served, okay, now you're not serving anymore, so, all right, so what do we have to owe you anything? And didn't realize that what they did, whether it was for, a few days or was for, 30 35 years, whatever their choice was, is that they and their families have sacrificed for their country. They, the individuals, when you sign up, you voluntarily sign up to join the service. And you know, I had a government teacher say, no, you have more rights when you're in the service than when you do out. Well, not necessarily. You give up some of your rights. One would be the freedom of speech to some great degree, because whatever you say can be, used against you. You can't talk bad about the president because he's the commander-in-chief. He's the commander-in-chief.
Well, right.
So, all right, and you just can't. In other words, there's a uniform code of military justice that you can get prosecuted for have a felony for DWI, or for messing around on your wife or your husband, or there's different laws that go into play that kind of people don't realize that veterans have to kind of be careful with. And then that old mentality is you got to end up learning how to shut up and color and move on. So veterans really sacrifice a lot for this country, and I think we've kind of lost respect for what they have done. Whether they served in the Iraq War or the Korean War, Vietnam War, even World War II, or any other war. They sacrifice, their family sacrifice. I don't know how many times when I get deployed, or if I'm somewhere, my wife and kids are without their father. I don't get to see them off to school, and I don't get to see the birth of their children, or so many things they miss out on, and the wives, or the spouses, I should say, are left behind to have to run the household, both mother and father, and do everything else. So, it asks and it drains a lot from our families. So I think we should be giving them the respect that they do. One of the things that I really want to push is that, and this is within the VA healthcare system, and just the healthcare system itself, is that, I would like any veteran who served in the military, whatever branch of service, that they have free VA healthcare for the rest of their life, regardless of the discharge they have or whatever the priority system is. Because whether they made it for a while or made it for a long time, they made the commitment to serve, and it just goes basically to the veteran itself. Our VA healthcare system has made significant progress over time, or decades, I should say. So it's just that's one of the big things I would like to see happen with our veteran population. They're doing good jobs with the education system, providing education systems for us to go to school. It's one of the reasons why I'm going back to graduate school, because this is my GI Bill.
That's great.
So there's some good progress. I just want to give our veterans the due that they respect, that their due respect that they deserve, I should say.
Well, and it's so interesting that you say that, because I went to a political event last night. It was actually a forum here in Boston, and it was organized by a group called Mass Vote. And they organize a lot of events along similar lines. And I actually am very appreciative of such events, because it gives the public a chance to be informed about the different candidates for various positions. And so there was a forum. It was held over the course of 2 hours. And so during the first hour, we had all the candidates who were running for state auditor, and actually for all the parties. Of course, Democrat, Republican. But also, there's one candidate from the Green Rainbow Party, and he was invited as well. He should be. I mean, if he's running, why would he? He should be present at on such an occasion. The second hour, it was for the position of state treasurer, and so the three candidates who are running, there are two Democrats and one Republican. They had been invited, and during the second hour, it was just really unfortunate towards the end. You had some members of Code Pink, or people affiliated with Code Pink, and it was really sad, because you have groups like Code Pink, and they just what they show, how they interact, how they express themselves, how they articulate what they believe. It's just really, it's shameful, and it's disgraceful. I mean, it's bad enough the views that they have, which I find particularly repugnant, particularly like towards the military. But it's how they go about expressing them. And so they were in full. They were in a. They were raring to go. Unfortunately, they were pretty much shut down before they could be particularly ugly. But I think about what you and thank you so much, Andrew, for serving. Thank you so much for making it safe for me back here at home, or helping to ensure, that, no, but really, seriously.
And I'll be honest with you, that, and it feels very uncomfortable, to be honest with you, when I hear that, and I've heard it many times.
It does. I mean,
I guess it's because we feel it's our duty, Why it's kind of like saying, like if I see a client and he says, okay, hey, thank you for helping me out. Well, no, it's my duty to help you. It's what I'm supposed to do. So that's kind of feels somewhat uncomfortable. I mean, we appreciate it, but it's our duty,
Yeah, you're not in it. You're not in it. I used a phrase earlier, to see your name in lights. Nothing makes me angrier when I see people out there talking about fighting the good fight. And what I have come to learn over my years is that the people who are really in it to fight the good fight, those are the ones who never mention that they're in it to fight the good fight. They just do it. And so and for me, that's members of the military. I mean, at the very least, you're cutting down on the likelihood, the work that you do is cutting down on the likelihood that I will be unsafe here in America, within the territory that is known as the United States of America. So, yes, I thank you. And really, I honor you. And so it's good to see someone who is a veteran looking to do something for other veterans. So I'm glad that that's part of your platform. We've talked about, different aspects of, different things that really are just you hold dear. So, really defending the Constitution, respecting the Constitution, and really what I hear coming out throughout this interview is just your desire to just, also bring people together. I mean, just kind of get rid of this divide, these different schisms that have developed and deepened over time. I see you taking a strong stand on education, making sure that we remain competitive. I see you taking a strong stand, obviously not only, connected with your military background, not only doing the right thing by fellow veterans, but also just in terms of our military wherewithal, making sure that we are a force to be reckoned with, so that we can defend the integrity of our land. Now, what else would you say? I mean, is there any part of your platform that I'm missing? I guess that's what I'm essentially saying. Is there something else that really is something that, when you get out the Andrew Castanuela message, you want to make sure that people hear this too?
Well, and the message is okay, if I was to be the straight shooter that I am, it's get off your butts and let's do something about this.
I like that.
Because it's not about me. It's not about my campaign as much as it is about what's going on with this country. So that is probably the message I'm getting out of this. Is do not let the media, do not let proponents try to tell you what you should or should not do, what you should not believe. Deep down in your heart, we have our divine self that we know what is right and wrong. And we can see that things are not going in the right direction. And it is time for us to stop sitting on the bench, okay, and watching the game get played. It's time for us to step up and start doing our duty as American citizens, as the managers of our country, to start managing our government, because they have significantly gotten way out of whack. They've gotten too much power, and the checks and balance system has lost its integrity and its fidelity. That we need to kind of put it back. So the real big thing is about getting out there and doing something. That's usually voting. Okay, getting active. Don't get caught up too much with Republican, Democrat, liberal, or independent, because it all comes down to, like I said, we're all Americans. We're all in this together. Okay, this is about us coming together.
And it's so funny because you have people who want to, I'm conservative. Well, if you're really, truly a conservative, I think a lot of people use words and they have more than one syllable and they don't know what it means. So,
I won't expand on theory on that either.
Yeah, right. But I think that for a lot of people, there's a profound misunderstanding about what being conservative means. And I mean, certainly it means holding the Constitution, being very passionate about it, and having a deep love for it. But it's also ultimately about all Americans. It's about preserving the infrastructure that allows for different points of view, different approaches, and different kind of ways to go about solving problems. It's about creating, preserving an infrastructure that allows for a political/social climate, if you will, to kind of flourish within it that just basically allows us to keep on moving forward and allows us to be great. And, so a lot of people who just kind of say that they're conservative and then they kind of fall into this kind of hole or rut, if you will, that just says, us versus them. I just don't feel like that's very productive. I don't feel like they're doing anything to get us any further away from stepping over or falling over the cliff. You see what I'm saying?
I mean, it's okay to have discussions and debates. I mean, that's healthy, okay? But, there's many times I would close the door in the service and I'd sit down with, the OIC, or I'd sit down with somebody and say, look, let me let you know right off the top, this isn't the wisest decision or the wisest policy. And we may come to a compromise because I would have to implement that policy. But once that door opened, okay, boom, now we're on the same team, okay? So it's okay to have discussions and different perspectives and even different principles. But as long as we're able to debate and find the middle ground on that and then unite us at that, regardless, we're always going to be American. And that's what we have to stick together with.
I completely agree. So, I mean, as we get ready to close up, Andrew, I would very much like you to share ways that people can get in touch with you, ways that people can find out more about you and your campaign, your candidacy, how people can get involved, help out.
Yeah, well, I got my website, like I said, Cast for Senate. The reason it's Cast is because when I was in the military, they couldn't say Castanuela. So the drill instructor just said Cast. Okay, great. It stuck with me for 20 years. I said, well, I kind of like it, so I'll stick with it. So it's CAS4Senate.com. And, of course, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter and those good things. But the biggest thing is, I guess to make this campaign kind of really make it happen is we need people. We need the normal American people to kind of put on their transfer, get on my Facebook, get on my campaign site, volunteer, network it. It's just like an email virus. Let's get this people.
Well, right. Spread the word, talk about, hey, pick up the phone, when you're going out to friends, just anything. Just, hey, I heard about this great candidate, Andrew Castanuela. He's running for U.S. Senate. The election's going to be taking place in 2012. Let's see what we can do to get involved.
Mm-hmm. And I'm there to help out any good candidate out there. Notice I say good candidate, as long as their heart is in the right place. And I guess that's the key. It's all about teamwork. I don't have a problem helping out other candidates as well.
And that's great. That's good to hear. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. Whenever I talk to a candidate, I'm always like, thank you, because I was just saying this to Jerry Dombrowski, whom I referenced earlier, and I was saying that he's during one of our earlier conversations, and I said that he's actually running for the 7th Congressional District House of Representatives seat here in the Bay State. It's a marathon. You know what I mean? It's not a sprint running for office. It's a marathon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't thank you enough for your time, Andrew.
Well, really, Rachel, I want to thank you.
Oh, please. And, whenever you want to come back on, just whenever, okay?
Well, I guess we'll get close. We might probably give you a ring, and just to keep, people throughout the nation know that, that the U.S. Senate affects every individual in this country. The race
it really does.
But no, but I really appreciate you, sitting down and talking with me. It's a pleasure. I hope we continue to, I've been to Boston once, and believe it or not, I loved it.
Of course I believe that. Not love Boston? What are you talking about?
Is that Boston Park Plaza? Is that the one every president stayed at ever? I think that's what.
Right. But, Andrew, so yes, I mean, just whenever you want to come back on, just give the word.
Well, keep in touch with me, Rachel.
I will do so. Thank you so much, Andrew.
And God bless.
God bless you too. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
So there you have it, folks. A wonderful, wonderful candidate. And I urge you to check him out, Andrew Castanuela, running for U.S. Senate in Texas. The elections will take place in 2012. This is someone who, as you heard throughout the course of this interview, holds the Constitution dear, has extensive military experience, and has a history of just really caring and trying to help people, as I said earlier, not only do better, but be better. But as I always do at the end of every show, I'd like to thank you, listeners, so much for listening, and I look forward to hanging out with you the next time. Bye now.